The night my life went up in flames didn't announce itself with sirens or screams. It whispered. A faint crackle, a curl of smoke creeping beneath my bedroom door, and then the sour tang of burning plastic snapping me out of a half-dream about a vacation I'd never get to take. By the time I staggered outside, barefoot in pajama pants and clutching my phone like a lifeline, the house I'd worked 2 jobs to buy was already swallowing itself whole. Flames climbed the siding like they had a vendetta, windows shattering outward in hot breaths of fire. The oak tree in the yard cast long, dancing shadows, like it was enjoying the show. My show. My nightmare. Neighbors spilled onto their lawns, some clutching phones, others muttering in low tones, faces lit by the inferno's glow. Someone yelled to call 911. Another started filming. The sound of the fire trucks in the distance was both a promise and a taunt. Help was coming, but it wouldn't be fast enough. The firefighters did what they could, but by the time the hoses hissed to life, the roof groaned like a dying animal and collapsed inward. A rain of sparks shot into the night sky, settling like cruel fireworks. My life, every tax return, every holiday photo, the stupid ceramic cat collection my aunt had forced on me, was ash before the first gallon of water hit the shingles. And that's when she appeared. Karen, president of the HOA, self-appointed dictator of cul-de-sac etiquette, and my personal tormentor since the day I moved in. She didn't rush in horror or gasp in sympathy. She strolled, latte in hand, robe cinched tight like she was making a casual morning inspection. Well, she said, surveying the flames as if she'd lit them herself. Maybe this wouldn't have happened if you'd listened about the garage door color. I stared at her, ash sticking to the sweat on my skin, and for a moment the fire behind me wasn't the hottest thing in sight. This isn't the time, Karen. I managed, voice raw from smoke. It's always the time to learn from mistakes, she replied, sipping her drink. Her lips curved in a smile so small you'd think it was a secret between us. That was the moment I knew. Not just suspected, not just theorized, knew. The fire wasn't some random spark or faulty wiring. This had fingerprints, and they were French-tipped. The fire marshal and police swarmed after dawn. They poked around the blackened shell of my house, boots crunching over what used to be my living room. When one of them emerged holding a charred red plastic jug, the look they exchanged was enough to stop my heart. Accelerant, the marshal muttered, low but not low enough. Looks like gasoline. I was standing under the flimsy awning of a borrowed motel umbrella when I heard it. My knees nearly gave. It wasn't faulty wiring. It wasn't a forgotten candle. Someone had burned me out on purpose. And in case the universe thought I needed extra salt, the insurance adjuster who met me later in the week leaned across the motel table with a rehearsed frown. Until the police finalize their investigation, I'm afraid we can't release any funds. Translation: enjoy homelessness. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames chewing through drywall, the photos curling like leaves, Karen's smug face sipping foam while my world collapsed. I kept thinking back over the years. The fines she'd written me: $50 for leaving my garbage bin out an extra hour, $100 for improper holiday decor because my lights blinked instead of glowed steadily. She once measured my grass with a ruler, an actual ruler, and taped a notice to my door that said 2 inches too high. Everyone in the neighborhood had their own Karen story, but mine had always felt personal. She didn't just want compliance, she wanted submission. And now she had gotten the ultimate punishment handed to me. No house, no stability, no future in this neighborhood. A few nights later, a hard knock rattled my motel door. I opened it to 2 uniformed officers, their expressions serious. "Mr. Taylor," one asked. "That's me. We wanted to inform you that we've identified a suspect linked to the fire." My heart jumped. "Is it?" I stopped myself, afraid to say the name aloud, afraid that just speaking it might break the spell and let her walk free. The officer shook his head. "We can't disclose until charges are filed. But we wanted you to know the investigation is moving forward." He left me standing in the thin yellow light of the hallway, door ajar, my mind spiraling. I didn't need their confirmation. I already saw her every time I closed my eyes. I heard her voice in the crackle of the flames. Karen had been there that night. She had to be. But if she was the suspect, why hadn't they dragged her away already? Why did she still strut through the neighborhood, collecting signatures and handing out violation slips like a queen passing decrees? The answer that chilled me most was simple. Maybe she was untouchable. The next day, I went back to the ruins of my house. The air still smelled of wet ash and chemicals. Charred beams jutted up like broken bones. As I picked through the wreckage for anything salvageable, Karen's SUV rolled slowly past. She lowered her sunglasses, gave a little wave, and drove on. A neighbor across the street, Mrs. Delgado, shuffled over. She was always quiet, the type to keep her curtains drawn. That morning, though, she looked jittery. "You should be careful," she whispered, eyes darting after Karen's car. "Careful?" I asked. "Of what?" Mrs. Delgado swallowed, lowering her voice further. "I saw her. The night of the fire. Out here. She was walking near your driveway, carrying something." The words crawled into my chest like ice. "What did you see?" I pressed. She shook her head. "I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it." And she hurried back to her house, slamming the door. Forget it. Sure. Forget that my life had been torched, and the HOA president might have walked away with the match still warm. That night, lying awake on the scratchy motel sheets, I made myself a promise. If the police weren't going to move fast enough, if the insurance company was going to drag its feet, then I'd find my own way to hold her accountable. Because Karen hadn't just burned my house down. She'd declared war. And I wasn't planning to lose. The motel bed was starting to feel like a coffin. Every morning I woke stiff, surrounded by the smell of bleach and old carpet, with a neon vacancy sign bleeding through the curtains like some cosmic reminder that my life was on hold. Meanwhile, Karen lived less than 200 yards away, carrying on as if nothing had happened. I saw her the first week after the fire, standing in her driveway with a clipboard, corralling neighbors into one of her infamous HOA meetings. Her hair was set, pearls glinting in the sun, a fresh manicure pointing out where shrubs needed trimming and whose recycling bins weren't aligned properly. You'd think she'd be laying low, but Karen wasn't built for shame. She thrived on spectacle. The practical nightmare of losing a house hit harder than the flames ever did. Insurance kept calling with polite delays. "We're still waiting on the police report, Mr. Taylor." Translation: "Don't bother us." Work became another battlefield. My boss tried to be sympathetic, but after the third late arrival and the fifth phone call about paperwork, his patience wore thinner than motel toilet paper. Co-workers whispered, not cruelly but with that tone that says better him than me. And then there were the bills, storage fees for what little I'd salvaged, rising motel charges, the looming specter of rent if insurance kept stalling. Every problem felt like a domino tipped by the match that burned my house. The neighborhood, though, was buzzing. At the gas station, I overheard two women from down the block. "Did you hear about Taylor's house? They say it was arson." "Arson? You think?" A pause, the whisper sharpened. "Karen." I didn't turn around, but I didn't need to. The seed was sprouting. One night, Mrs. Delgado, the same neighbor who'd hinted she'd seen Karen, left a grocery bag on my motel step. Inside was Tupperware full of chicken and rice, and a sticky note, "You're not alone." No signature, but I knew her handwriting. Later, she knocked softly, looking like someone on the edge of confession. "She's been saying things," Delgado murmured, "to people, about how your garage was a fire hazard, how you ignored her warnings. Almost bragging." I felt my jaw clench. "You'll tell the police." Her face pinched. I can't. She scares me. She's threatened people before." Then she left, scurrying back like a shadow. I hired a lawyer. His name was Carter, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair. The kind of guy who looked like he'd read every HOA regulation just for fun. He listened patiently as I spilled every detail. "Sounds like you've got a vendetta case on your hands," he said finally. "But vendetta isn't proof. Police need evidence that ties her directly to the fire. You need motive, means, and opportunity. She had all three, I snapped. He held up a calming hand. Yes, but we need courtroom evidence. And I'll warn you, HOA disputes muddy things. If she can spin this as neighborhood tension, juries sometimes sympathize with the community protector. Community protector. My stomach turned. Karen didn't hide. She made herself bigger. At the next HOA meeting, held in her garage because the clubhouse was too inconvenient, she actually brought up my burned house. Not with compassion, but as a cautionary tale. This is why we enforce standards, she said, arms folded across her chest, chin lifted like a queen. Negligence leads to tragedy. We must protect our neighborhood. I stood at the back, fists shoved in my pockets. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. One or two looked ready to speak up, then swallowed it. Karen had that effect. She made people doubt their own outrage. But her confidence had a crack. I saw it in the way her gaze flicked toward me, quick and sharp, like she was daring me to challenge her. The police investigation dragged, but finally, after weeks of silence, they made their move. A call came one afternoon. Mr. Taylor, we wanted you to know Karen Thompson has been taken into custody for suspected arson. I nearly dropped the phone. Relief surged so strong I had to sit down. I pictured her being cuffed, her pearls clinking as she sputtered excuses. Justice was finally starting to stir. That high lasted less than 12 hours. By morning, she was back. Her silver SUV pulled into the driveway like nothing had happened, and she walked out in the same pastel suit she always wore to HOA meetings. Word spread fast. Her wealthy brother, a real estate developer, had posted bail before the ink on her paperwork was dry. When I saw her smirk from across the street, it was like being doused with ice water. Karen, if anything, doubled down. She started walking past the ruins of my house daily, pausing to shake her head in exaggerated pity. Tragic, she said once when she caught me there. But maybe next time, you'll follow the HOA handbook. Next time. I shot back, barely keeping control. Planning another fire. Her lips curled. Oh, don't be dramatic. Fires happen. Houses burn. Life goes on. The way she said it, casual and cutting, made me want to scream. A few neighbors began testing their courage. The Johnsons, who lived 3 houses down, invited me over for coffee. Over steaming mugs, Mrs. Johnson confessed, Karen threatened to fine us $500 if we didn't tear down our kids' treehouse. Said it was a liability. When we refused, she started saying maybe our insurance wouldn't like it. We thought she was bluffing. Another neighbor admitted Karen had once bragged, some people only learn when they get burned. He thought it was a metaphor. Now he wasn't so sure. The stories piled up like kindling. Each one made her guilt more obvious, and my frustration sharper. If everyone knew, why was she still walking free? Then came the letter. Delivered by certified mail, it bore the HOA's seal. Inside, a notice of violation. Addressed to me. Failure to maintain property in accordance with HOA standards. I laughed out loud, a harsh, bitter sound. My property was a pile of ashes, and she had the gall to fine me for it. The fee, $250. It was almost genius. Burn me out, then bill me for the mess. I took the letter straight to Carter. He skimmed it, his jaw tightening. She's taunting you, he said. But this is good, it shows intent. A jury will eat this up. Will they? Or will they just see me as the guy who can't keep his house in one piece? He looked me dead in the eye. That depends on how much fight you've got left. The fight came to a head when I got the summons. Court. Karen wasn't just a shadow in my nightmares anymore. She was going to be in the same room, across the aisle, in front of a judge and jury. When I held that envelope in my hands, the motel room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. This wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't whispers or smirks or burned beams. It was official. Karen was going to stand trial for arson. And I was going to be the one watching her try to slither her way out of it. The courthouse smelled like polished wood, coffee, and nerves. Rows of benches filled with neighbors who had no business being there except curiosity. For them, this was better than daytime television. A front row seat to watch Karen Thompson, queen of the HOA, finally have to explain herself. For me, it was something else. I wasn't just watching. I was living inside the wreckage she left behind. My hands clenched and unclenched in my lap, the skin raw from weeks of stress. Every tick of the courtroom clock echoed in my chest like a countdown. Then she walked in. Karen didn't shuffle in like someone accused of burning down a house. She arrived. Pastel suit, hair sprayed into defiance, pearls bouncing with each step. She waved at the gallery like a politician on the campaign trail. One neighbor even raised a hand back, sheepishly, as if caught in some spell. And she smiled at me. That smug, narrow smile I'd seen the night of the fire. The one that said she believed she'd already won. The prosecutor started strong. He laid out a timeline. Karen had been seen near my property the night of the fire, holding a container. Gasoline traces found in my garage matched residues on gardening gloves recovered from her trash. Surveillance footage from a nearby traffic camera placed her SUV near my house around midnight. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, pacing before the jury, "this is not a case of faulty wiring. This is not an accident. This is malice. This is a neighbor who believed herself above the law." I wanted to cheer, but my lawyer had warned me, stay composed. Juries hate theatrics from victims. Karen's lawyer, however, leaned into theatrics like it was oxygen. A tall man with a voice like warm honey, he painted Karen as a pillar of the community, a woman unfairly vilified for simply doing her duty. "Mrs. Thompson has dedicated years to protecting her neighborhood," he said, gesturing toward the jury with open palms. "She enforces the rules because rules matter. Without them, chaos reigns. But when tragedy struck, rather than accountability, the easy route was blame. Blame the strong woman who dares to say no to her neighbors." Karen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue on cue. Not a tear in sight. The lawyer went further, suggesting that I might have been negligent. Maybe faulty wiring, maybe a space heater left on. Maybe some personal grudge causing me to see enemies where there were none. He even produced a stack of papers, supposed complaints Karen had filed about me over the years, painting me as reckless, irresponsible. It was like watching her weaponize years of harassment and spin it into sainthood. When I took the stand, I thought I was ready. I wasn't. The prosecutor kept me steady. I explained the timeline, my history with Karen, the fines, the threats, the smirks. The jury listened, some nodding, some skeptical. Then came the cross-examination. Karen's lawyer circled me like a shark. "So, Mr. Taylor, you admit you had electrical issues in the past." "One outlet," I said. "It was repaired." "And you admit you left your garbage bins out against HOA policy." I clenched my jaw. "Once." He leaned closer. "Isn't it true you resented Mrs. Thompson for simply doing her job?" "She wasn't doing her job, she was harassing me." He smiled thinly. "Or is it possible, sir, that you're so eager to blame her you're ignoring your own carelessness? After all, your insurance hasn't even paid out yet. Correct? And who benefits most from this fire if not you?" The jury shifted. My throat went dry. I wanted to shout, "I lost everything, you snake," but the judge's gavel cracked, silencing me before I made it worse. When I stepped down, Karen's smile was wider. The trial dragged on. Witnesses trickled in, neighbors who'd seen Karen patrolling the streets that night, firefighters who confirmed the fire started at the garage door. The evidence was strong, but every time Karen's lawyer opened his mouth, he sowed doubt. Maybe the gloves had gasoline because she did yard work. Maybe the SUV was near my house because she was patrolling for suspicious activity. And always, Karen sat there, nodding along, a saint in pearls. Then came the twist. A surprise witness. The prosecutor called Mr. Harris, our neighborhood recluse. The man barely waved at anyone, let alone got involved in drama. He shuffled to the stand in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Mr. Harris," the prosecutor asked gently, Did your home security system capture anything on the night of the fire? Harris nodded, fumbling with a flash drive. My doorbell camera. It, records everything. I didn't look at it right away. But when I did, the screen lit up. Grainy night footage, timestamped. Karen, unmistakable, walking up my driveway at 11:57 p.m. In her hand, a red gas can. She glanced around, then disappeared into the darkness toward my garage. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, someone in the gallery muttering "Holy hell." My chest clenched, relief and rage colliding. Karen's face twitched, just for a moment, before her lawyer leapt to his feet. Objection. This evidence was obtained without proper disclosure. It's inadmissible. The judge rapped the gavel, ordering silence. The jury looked shaken, eyes darting between me, the prosecutor, and Karen, who now sat stiff, lips pressed thin. The judge leaned forward, voice grave. We'll recess to deliberate on the admissibility of this footage. Bang. Court adjourned for the day. I stumbled out into the hallway, adrenaline buzzing like electricity. Neighbors crowded me, some patting my shoulder, others whispering, "She's done for." But I knew better. I'd seen Karen wriggle out of smaller traps before. If this footage was thrown out, if the jury never saw her with that gas can, then her lawyer's narrative could still win. And if that happened, she'd walk out smiling again. Smiling, and ready for revenge. The next morning, the courthouse felt different. Heavier. Like everyone could sense we were walking into the endgame. Neighbors filed in again, buzzing with theories. Some were certain Karen was toast. Others, knowing her history of slipperiness, muttered that she'd find a way to wriggle out. I sat in the front row, heart hammering. Carter, my lawyer, leaned over. If the judge throws out that footage, it'll be harder, but not impossible. Keep steady. But I wasn't steady. My stomach twisted every time I pictured Karen walking free. The judge entered, robes swaying, and silence fell. He cleared his throat, eyes sharp as he looked over the court. Regarding the admissibility of the doorbell footage, he said, pausing long enough for every heart to seize, "This court finds the evidence was obtained lawfully and is therefore admissible." Gasps rippled through the room. I exhaled so hard it felt like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. Karen, though, her mask cracked. Just a flicker. Her jaw tightened, her knuckles whitened around that little tissue she hadn't let go of all trial. For the first time, she looked less like a queen and more like a cornered animal. The prosecutor wasted no time. He replayed the footage on the big screen, pausing on the frame where Karen's face was lit by the porch light, gas can clutched in her manicured hand. "This," he told the jury, "is not negligence. This is not a misunderstanding. This is intent. This is malice." He wove everything together, her history of harassment, the accelerant on the gloves, her smug taunts after the fire, and now the undeniable footage. Each word landed like a hammer blow. By the time he sat down, the jury looked grim. Karen's lawyer stood, smoothing his suit, but his confidence had wilted. He tried. He suggested the footage was ambiguous, that maybe Karen was simply checking on my house, maybe she carried a gas can for yard work, maybe the timing was coincidental. But the words rang hollow. Even the neighbors in the gallery, who once whispered about her like she was untouchable, shifted with open disbelief. And then came the moment that sealed it. Karen herself took the stand. At first, she kept the act polished. Voice sweet, posture perfect. She insisted she had been patrolling for the good of the neighborhood. That she sometimes carried gardening supplies at night. That she was being scapegoated by an ungrateful neighbor who refused to follow rules. But under cross-examination, the cracks spread. "Mrs. Thompson," the prosecutor asked smoothly, "why didn't you call the fire department when you were at the scene moments before the fire?" I didn't see anything," she stammered. "Yet the footage shows you walking directly toward the area where the fire began. With a gas can. You expect this court to believe you saw nothing." Karen's face flushed. She glanced at the jury, searching for sympathy, but found only hard stares. And then she snapped. "This whole neighborhood is ungrateful," she burst out, her voice sharp enough to echo. "You think I wanted it to happen? Maybe it was the only way to teach him a lesson." The room went dead silent. The judge banged the gavel for order, but the damage was done. Karen's mask had shattered in front of everyone. Closing arguments were almost unnecessary after that. The prosecutor drove it home, reminding the jury that justice wasn't about HOA fines or personal grudges. It was about right and wrong. Karen's lawyer tried to salvage it, but even his voice faltered. He knew it was over. The jury filed out. I sat frozen, palms slick with sweat. 15 minutes stretched into an hour. Then the bailiff called us back in. The foreman stood, paper in hand. On the charge of arson, we find the defendant, Karen Thompson, guilty. On the charge of reckless endangerment, guilty. On the charge of harassment, guilty. Each word landed like thunder. My chest finally loosened. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been carrying until it slipped free. Karen let out a strangled cry. She shot up, screaming about conspiracies, pointing at me, at the judge, at anyone who'd listen. "This is a witch hunt. You're all jealous. I made this neighborhood." 2 bailiffs restrained her, dragging her out as she kicked and cursed. The pearls around her neck snapped, scattering across the courtroom floor like tiny white lies. The reign of Karen was over. The aftermath unfolded slowly, like the embers finally cooling. Insurance released the funds. I got restitution, too, Karen's frozen accounts and assets liquidated to cover damages. It wasn't instant wealth, but it was enough to rebuild. Neighbors rallied in ways I never expected. The Johnson kids drew me welcome home cards. Mrs. Delgado showed up with home-cooked meals. Even Mr. Harris, the recluse, offered to help haul debris when construction began. The neighborhood felt lighter. Without Karen's shadow looming, people laughed more. Kids' bikes littered lawns without anyone snapping photos for violations. Holiday lights twinkled freely, in any color or blink pattern people wanted. The HOA board voted her out and restructured. Rules still existed, but they were guidelines now, not weapons. And me, I rebuilt. Months later, I stood on the porch of my new house. Fresh paint, stronger beams, windows that gleamed in the sun. My home. Neighbors gathered for a barbecue to celebrate. Someone joked about how we should make Karen effigies for the 4th of July, and the laughter rolled like thunder. I looked around at the people who'd once been cowed, now free to breathe, and I realized the fire hadn't just destroyed something, it had revealed something. Karen had ruled by fear. But fear only works until people see it burn out. I raised my glass, the crowd buzzing around me, and said quietly to myself, "Karma doesn't just knock, it files charges."